Welcome to another Facebook Live. Tonight's Facebook Live edition was inspired by one of you who wrote to me asking me to discuss the relationship between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law and a mother-in-law to a daughter-in-law. I actually did this video, this live, a few years back when I just started to go on Facebook, and I did it in Russian. I translated this particular book called Woman to Woman, and I translated it from English to Russian. It's been 4 years, and I think it's important to have a refresher to once again touch this very important topic and to address this very needed topic of how should a daughter-in-law behave in front of her mother-in-law, and how should a mother-in-law behave in front of her daughter-in-law. So I did post a poll on Instagram asking what topic should we cover first. Should we talk about the daughter-in-law's role, or should we discuss the mother-in-law's role? We actually had a very close tie, so it was a 50-50 so far. The poll is exactly 50-50. Therefore, we're going to have to probably just pick or ask you, the viewers right now, to choose. Should we discuss the relationship between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law first, or the other way around? As always, I would like to ask, if you hear me and see me clearly, to please put a thumbs up sign, a like sign, write a comment so that I know that you're able to hear me and see me with no distractions. Because as always, as I always mention, Facebook does have its days where it chooses randomly where we can see people, where we can't see comments. So if you can hear me and see me clearly, just write or put a thumbs up sign, and I know that we are on the air and there are no interruptions with the streaming of the Facebook Live. And once again, if you want to tell me tonight, should we discuss a role of a mother-in-law to a daughter-in-law, or the daughter-in-law to the mother-in-law first, if you can comment with what topic we should address first, we're going to choose that particular topic first. So this is the book that we are going to be reading from tonight. It's called Woman to Woman. It's written by Rebbetzin Esther Greenberg. It's an amazing book. It talks about, it's a very good gift actually, if you know someone who is getting married and you want to give her a gift. This is a very, very good book to give a bride, because it covers all kinds of topics in this book, okay? Some of the topics, while we're waiting, some of the topics that this book covers is communication between a husband and wife, being faithful to a husband, controlling your anger, prioritizing, okay? Being happy, how to celebrate holidays with your family members, appreciation, the value of time, criticism, emotional maturity, staying close to Hashem, how to be a good mother, how to Okay, so it looks like I am not seeing anybody's comments, and I'm not, if that is because we are not able to hear me, see me, or because there is a connection gap, I don't know, but so far I haven't seen anybody's comments on the live. So before we begin, one more time, if you are able to see me, hear me clearly, write something on the comment section before we begin so that I am aware and I know that Facebook is streaming properly. Can you hear me? Okay. So it doesn't seem like I am able to see anything tonight. I may have to restart this live. Okay. So I'm just going to begin, and hopefully if you can hear me, that's great. If not, that'll just be, I'll find out after the live starts streaming. But we're going to begin tonight. Since the poll was so close, and we didn't really know which topic to cover first, the book starts off with the relationship between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. So we're going to start with the way the book starts. How should a daughter-in-law act and respond towards her mother-in-law? That's what we're going to cover tonight. And then, God willing, next live is going to be the way the mother-in-law should conduct herself in front of her daughter-in-law. So if the book starts off by saying that it is our obligation, okay? We owe our parents a lot. Our parents raised us, they brought us into the world, and it is our obligation to respect our parents. Not only is it our obligation to respect our parents, it is a bigger obligation to respect our husband's parents. Why? Because the mother of the man that you fell in love with is the one that brought him into the world, is the lady who raised such a man for you that you came to fall in love with him. So as a daughter-in-law, you are obligated to respect your mother-in-law just like you would respect your own mother, because you owe her a tremendous amount of gratitude for raising such a wonderful son that you are currently married to. And the book continues and says, when we say the word mother-in-law, okay, anytime we say the word mother-in-law, there is an immediate derogatory connotation. Right away, what happens? What comes to mind? This negative response, mother-in-law, oh my God. But think for a moment. The woman the whole world calls your mother-in-law is actually the person who brought the husband that you love up into this world. She raised him and educated the very same person you chose to marry, the one that you found everything you were looking for. She must have done a quite good job and deserves a great deal of gratitude for her accomplishment. Once you begin of thinking that way, the picture changes. As one new bride once said, during the first week, I thought about a lot how much I owed my mother-in-law for raising such a wonderful son. I wanted to show her how much it meant to me. So I went over to her, hugged her, and told her, thanks for giving me such a wonderful husband. Every daughter-in-law can do so much for her relationship with her mother-in-law if she treats her the right way. The first step is to study her, okay? So as a daughter-in-law, the Rebbetzin is telling us, the first step is to study your mother-in-law. Understand what makes her tick, okay? What makes her unhappy? What makes her get annoyed? You want to be able to study her. Just like you study your husband and your children. If your mother-in-law is very warm, not interfering, right? She doesn't mix in with anything. She minds her own business. She doesn't get involved with anything. Then you can create a relationship with her like a mother and a daughter. Remember though, that once you create such a relationship, you cannot complain when she starts to act like a real mother and gives you advice like she would to her own daughter. So basically, sometimes we get so close to our mother-in-laws, we feel so comfortable with them that our mother-in-law starts to treat us like a daughter. She's very comfortable telling us some constructive criticism or telling us her opinion about certain things that we picked. We can't get offended all of a sudden and be like, well, why is she telling me what to do? Why? Because you created such a close bond with her that she feels so connected to you that she's becoming very comfortable. So if you develop such a relationship, be mindful of this. On the other hand, if you have the kind of mother-in-law who has a negative comment about everything, then the best approach is to keep your distance. With this person, if you ask for a favor, you're giving her an opening to expect something from you in return. Okay? Which means what? If you have a mother-in-law who's the type, okay, that she has her own way of thinking, she says what she thinks, she's a little bit on the negative side, try not to keep too much closeness. And don't ask her for favors, says the book. Because why? If you're asking her, hey, can you pick up my kids from school today? Are you able to host us for Shabbat? And you're asking her to do something for you, somebody with that personality is going to expect something from you in return. Okay? Whether you ask her for constant babysitting, financial support, buying your children clothing, whatever it is that you ask a mother-in-law who is like that, which is a little bit on the negative side, understand you will be in debt. She will feel, and justifiably so, that she has the right to voice her opinion. If you sense that she's the kind of person who has something to say about everything, be very nice. Treat her with respect. Still, it says, treat her with respect. But be wary of spoiling the relationship by accepting too many gifts. If you want to maintain your privacy and independence, don't ask for favors. So first, know what kind of personality your mother-in-law has. If your mother-in-law is very non-interfering, non-judgmental, really lives, to herself, get close to her. But if your mother-in-law is not like that, and she has more of a very opinionated personality, the book is telling you, be careful. Don't ask too many favors. Be away, distance. That doesn't mean be on bad terms, okay? That doesn't mean be in a fight. Don't let your kids go to her. Don't let your husband communicate with her. This is not what the book is recommending. The book just says be mindful of her personality. With every mother-in-law, the first step in developing a good relationship is what? Is to give her a lot of respect. Try your best to bring her happiness. You could ask her for recipes of your husband's favorite food. It's a rule. Every son loves his mother's cooking. No matter how bad of a cook she may be, even if she burns the food. For a husband, for a son, right? His mother's cooking reminds him of the taste of his house. He's never going to forget that. You may be a better cook than her. It doesn't matter. Ask your mother-in-law what dishes your husband likes. Don't be embarrassed when she wants to help you make them. If she sends you food, accept it. It's going to make her feel needed and wanted, okay? So if your mother-in-law decided to cook something for you, and she sent it to you out of happiness, she wants to do it for you, and you don't really feel like you want it, you already cooked dinner, don't say, I don't need it, thank you so much. No, it's fine, we ate something, because that's going to offend her. Even if you ate, accept it, because she will feel good that she was able to do something for her son and for you. She may want to teach you how to make it, or she may want to continue bringing it to you already prepared. Even if you rather make it yourself, let her bring it several times to you before suggesting that she should maybe teach you how to make it. And showing her that you appreciate her cooking, you are increasing her self-worth. So you're making her feel that she's important to you when you're accepting the food that she brings you. Whenever we ask a person for advice, it brings his self-esteem and gives him a sense of closeness to us. So ask your mother-in-law for advice, okay? Let's say you're not sure. When should you start potty training your 2-year-old? When they're 2, when they're 1.5, when they're 2.5, when they go to daycare? Ask your mother-in-law for her advice. She's going to feel closer because you're asking her for your advice. However, and it says it in bold letters, never ask her for advice on matters between you and your husband. So this area between you and your husband, you don't ask your mother-in-law. This area needs to remain private. In other areas, Give your mother-in-law the feeling that her advice is valuable and appreciated. She's going to feel important. She's going to feel wanted, needed, loved. And what happens when we make a person feel loved? That person wants to continue being alive. If she's an older person, she's going to need even more love, even more warmth, even more affection, right? So if your mother-in-law is older, she's going to crave for that even more. So ask her for advice, but remember, never ask for advice between you and your husband. For example, your husband mistreated you, he made you upset, he got annoyed about something. This is not a conversation between her and you. That is private. You ask that from your Rebbitzin, you ask that from a marriage counselor, you ask that from your Kala teacher. You don't ask your mother-in-law about personal relationship advice. That is not her place, okay? Another point for enhancing your relationship with your mother-in-law is what? Another way of making yourself closer to your mother-in-law so that she can love you more. When you come to visit her, okay, don't act like you're coming on a vacation. For example, you come for Shabbat. You're not going to her for vacation. You came? Be respectful. There are daughter-in-laws who work very hard, so they think when they come to their mother-in-law's house, they're entitled to a 5-star hotel treatment. The minute they arrive, they sit themselves down and they don't budge from their chair. They may offer help, but they do it in such a way that the mother-in-law feels uncomfortable to even ask them for help. They ask, "Do you need my help?" When someone says that, what's your automatic response? "No, thank you, I can manage." So when you ask somebody, "Do you need my help? Do you want me to set the table? Do you want me to bring the salad?" Your mother-in-law is not going to feel comfortable saying yes. Her automatic response is, "No, sit, I'll manage." So that's not the proper way to ask someone if they need your help. If you see your mother-in-law is working, that means she needs help. Because the implication is that they cannot manage without your help. Meaning, if your mother-in-law tells you, "Yeah, do you mind setting the table?" First of all, she's nervous, she's going to offend you. And second of all, it's not like she can't do it. She can do it. She can set the table. She can bring out the salads. She can cut up the vegetables. It's not like she can't. So her automatic response is going to be, "No, thank you." When a mother-in-law has worked so hard to prepare a beautiful meal for Shabbat or for the family, it's not like she cannot manage. Of course she can. However, you as a daughter-in-law, think of yourself as a daughter at that moment. How would you have responded if you were in your mother's house? We say that when a child gets married, you don't lose a child, you gain another. When your son gets married, you gain a daughter. When your daughter gets married, you gain a son. So when you as a daughter-in-law come to your mother-in-law's house, come to her as a daughter. Do you go to your mother's house and sit on a chair without moving? Or do you care about your mother so much that you get up even without her asking for your help? Do you ask your mother if she needs help, or do you go straight to the kitchen and just start helping her? Behave the same way in your mother-in-law's house, unless you sense that she's uncomfortable when you do that. So if your mother-in-law made it very clear, she doesn't want you in the kitchen, she's very particular, she wants to do everything by herself, that's different. And there are not that many mother-in-laws like that. Most want other people to help them. We're humans, we get tired. So according to this Rebbitzin who's teaching us in this book, she says, don't ask. You came to your mother-in-law's house, you go and you act like you would in your mother's house. For a harmonious family relationship, remember, a mother accepts things from her son that would hurt her if they came from her daughter-in-law. Let's say, okay, what does that mean? Let's say your mother-in-law invited you for Shabbat and you accepted. Okay, she invites you, she says, "Hey, want to come to our house for Shabbat?" And you say, "Sure, no problem." Then in the middle of the week, you found out something came up and you can't go this Shabbat. You made a mistake. You should not have agreed to go. what should you do? Don't call to cancel. It says you should not be the one that's calling her to say, I can't come. You should never be the one to pick up the phone and say, sorry, we can't come. Never. Why? Because you're not her daughter. She's going to accept it from her son, but she's not going to accept it when it comes from you. Instead, ask your husband to make the call. Your mother-in-law will accept the disappointment easily if it comes from her son. So when you have to cancel on her after you said you're going to come, according to the Rebbitzin of this book, it says you should not be the one to call. Your husband should be the one that's calling and saying, we cannot make it. Another very important rule for a daughter-in-law is never interfere in quarrels. Never interfere in arguments. Okay? If your husband is having an argument with his parents, don't take sides, because afterwards he will not forgive you. He may realize he was wrong by himself. Stay out of family arguments. Do not interfere. It's not your business unless you were asked to get involved. Often women destroy their marriage because they never learned one simple secret of family harmony. Never criticize your in-laws. Never. Okay? So never put your in-laws down in front of your husband. These are his parents. These are the people that raised him. These are the people that brought him into the world and the ones that he really truly loves. Okay? As all men, they should love their mothers and fathers. So you should never, as a daughter-in-law, put his parents down, criticize them, bash them, ridicule them in front of your husband. Never. Under any circumstances, even if they give you trouble, your husband will never forgive unfavorable remarks made about his parents. If you want to achieve the most out of your life with your husband, use a positive approach to everything, your in-laws included, even if they are difficult people. Okay, so your in-laws can be the most difficult people. True. And we said in the beginning, keep a distance, a respectful boundary, but do not put your in-laws down in front of your husband. You can always find something good to say about everyone. For example, okay, if for instance, they don't have the same religious standards as you, you can focus on the fact that they have a good character, that they're devoted parents, that they're kind, that they love you. So let's say you have a mother-in-law who doesn't keep Shabbat, and you invite her, and she turns on the light, or she's on her phone, and it really irritates you. And you should not, it says here, bash them in front of your husband and say, what is this? I don't understand. Why is your mother constantly on the phone? Even if you're right. Instead, the Rebbitzin teaches us in this book, find something good to say. Wow, your mother is such a devoted parent. She loves you so much. I love how she treats our kids. You have to find something positive, because your son is going to be so happy when you respect his mother. In turn, he's going to respect you back, because when you respect his mother, he's going to fall even more in love with you. If your mother-in-law is possessive, okay, she's very possessive type, and you value your privacy and independence, keep a distance. It's preferable to move, okay? This is important, because I had a question like this actually about moving together with in-laws. It's preferable to move into a tiny little apartment of your own if your in-laws are possessive. That's the beginning. Remember, if your in-laws are the type, they're very they don't butt in, they don't interfere, they live to themselves, which is very hard to even tell in the beginning. You can't really tell unless you know them. But if they're the type to be very protective, and they have an opinion about everything, then it's better to live in a tiny little apartment of your own, rather instead of living in a luxurious house together, okay? With them or right next door to them, if you want to remain independent, okay? This is important. If you want your privacy and independence, you rather live in a studio, in a one-bedroom apartment, the smallest little apartment of your own, rather than moving into a huge mansion together with your in-laws, or even saying, I'm going to live right next door to them. They can be the greatest people in the world. They may want the best for their children. But if you want to have your independence and privacy, you need to go your separate ways. A little bit of a distance is better. It's going to create less problems and arguments in your marriage. If your husband is the youngest child of the family, okay, if your husband is the last son, you have to understand that your mother-in-law is going to be experiencing empty nest syndrome. What is empty nest syndrome? The house is empty. All her children are gone. It's just her and her husband. And she feels lonely. She doesn't have that, she has a void. She doesn't know what to do. She wants the company of her child. It's harder when your husband is the youngest of the family. And it says over here, as a daughter-in-law, if you want your mother-in-law not to constantly call, not to constantly, interfere, try to keep her busy. Maybe have her friends invite her, have her join different kind of volunteer programs and groups. Advise that to her, because the busier she's going to be, the less she's going to need her son to fill that little void that she's missing. And then lastly, before the chapter concludes, okay, because the next thing is going to talk about mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, which is the other way around. Not how a daughter-in-law should be, but how a mother-in-law should be. The chapter concludes and ends off saying, even if your mother-in-law is giving you some sort of an advice, okay, she wants to teach you something that she knows, whether it's about religion, whether it's about how to raise your children, and you may not necessarily agree with her advice, right? You feel, what does she know? She's so old-fashioned. It says over here in the book, don't be rude. Don't right away say, no, we know how to do it. Oh, that's old-fashioned, because it's going to hurt her feelings. Even if you don't necessarily agree with the advice that your mother-in-law is going to give you, answer her in the following way. You're right, that's such a great idea. And still do it your way. Okay? Continue doing it the way you want to do it. Say you're right. But don't be rude and cut her off abruptly. So that was about the mother-in-law, the daughter-in-law. Let me see how much time we have. Oh, okay. So I hope that was good. Should we continue the chapter? We have a few minutes to cover the part with the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. Okay, so I think we can do it all in one video. I thought we have to break them up into two separate videos, but I think we can actually cover them into one video. So the next part of this chapter is going to be discussing being a mother-in-law and how she should act towards her daughter-in-law. So we are going to actually cover that right now, and I think it's going to be better than putting a different video, because it's going to just be in one video. All right, let us move on. Discussing a mother-in-law's role towards her daughter-in-law. Okay, this should be fun. Now, I am not a mother-in-law, but I definitely can learn a lot from these advice that are being given in this book. And for those of you that are mother-in-laws, this is important. This is very good advice in trying to maintain your relationship with your daughter-in-laws. Being a mother-in-law is apparently just as difficult as being a daughter-in-law. In some families, you hear a mother-in-law saying, my daughter-in-law, she has a mother. Let her mother buy her the presents. I buy presents for my daughters. This attitude can only cause jealousy in the family and bad feelings. Once your son is married, you gained a daughter, so treat her like one. There is a saying in Yiddish. Now, they're saying in Yiddish. I don't know how to pronounce it, but the translation of the saying is, a mother-in-law should give presents, swallow whatever she has to say, and keep quiet. They also say that when a mother-in-law comes to visit her daughter-in-law, she should take a deep breath, have a bite to eat, and then leave. Make your visits short and sweet. As a mother-in-law, before visiting your daughter-in-law, always ask her what to bring. The idea of what to bring is what she likes, not what you like. Some daughter-in-laws hate their mother-in-law's presents. Even the most beautiful, expensive garment brought for a grandchild, if the daughter-in-law does not like it, she's going to hang it up in the closet and never use it. Therefore, if you have a daughter-in-law like that, you rather give her money and let her buy whatever she wants to buy. Even if you have better taste than your daughter-in-law, if your daughter-in-law is very picky, give her money instead of a present. When you go to visit your grandchildren, don't bring them candy. If your daughter-in-law does not let them eat sweets, ask your daughter-in-law, what should you bring your grandkids? And always find out when is a good time to stop by. Some mother-in-laws come at the most inconvenient times. When the daughter-in-law just managed to get the children supper, to get them to bed, and finally she thinks to herself, oh, what a tiring day. I can't wait to relax. And what happens? She hears a knock on the door. The kids hear the grandparents. They start jumping out of bed. They're so excited. Somebody came to rescue them. And the evening starts all over again. Her daughter-in-law feels like fainting on the spot. Now, such a mother-in-law is behaving in a very unconsiderate way. She made it difficult for her daughter-in-law. If she wants to visit, she has to visit in the beginning of the evening. Help her make supper. Help her give the children a bath. Help her put the children to bed. Now that's true consideration. As a mother-in-law, do not go into your daughter-in-law's kitchen unless you are invited. Interesting. Wow. Okay. I personally think I don't mind, but you see, according to this Rebbitzin, she's advising do not go to the kitchen unless you're invited, which means she wants you. She's accepting of you. She doesn't mind if you're in the kitchen. It's none of your business whether or not the dishes are dirty and are piled sky high. And don't go around opening her closets and doors. That is being nosy. If your daughter-in-law wants to treat you like a guest, act like one. Sit down, drink a cup of coffee, play with the children, and then leave. Don't interfere and avoid all criticism. The parents of a young couple can often find themselves in a tug of war about rights and privileges if they are not careful. If the young couple lives in the same town as both parents, okay, arguments start to come up. How much time they spend with his parents, how much time they spend with her parents, who they go to for the holidays, who they name the baby after, and it becomes a problem. This is a word of advice. If you're a mother-in-law, okay, this is the word of advice for a mother-in-law. If you are a mother-in-law, always give in to the other side. Always give in to the other side, which means give in that your daughter-in-law is going to her mother for Shabbat, that she's close to her. Give in. It may be difficult for you, but give in to it. If you do, the children will love coming to you. It's usually the parents who are demanding that are harder to tolerate. The young couple may give in to your demands, but they will not like it. The more independence you give your children, the more they're going to come to you. The more independence you give them, the more they love you, the more they respect you, and the love coming home to you. But when a mother ties the children to her apron strings, these children want to get away from her and never come back. To avoid this negative reaction, let the other side be first. Which means, if you're a mother-in-law or a parent and you're constantly nudging your son, you have to come to us for Pesach, you have to be by us for the first night, what do you mean? We have to be it, you're our son, and you're constantly pressuring your son, and his wife wants to go to her mother. And when your son hears you pressure him, because he doesn't want to upset you, yeah, he's going to come to you because he doesn't want to upset you. He doesn't want to deal with it. But is he going to be happy? He probably had a big argument in his house. His wife and him got into a fight. And they're going to come, but they're not going to be happy about it. So the book is saying, be the type of parent that doesn't really care so much, that doesn't really get involved, that doesn't really interfere. They want to go to her side first? Go ahead. You want to go to vacation with your family? Go ahead. When you act like it doesn't really bother you, and you don't mix in, and you don't get involved, and you don't put your 2 cents in, your kids are going to be so happy that you're giving them so much freedom. Automatically, they're going to love your company, come to you. They're going to want to come to you more. They're going to be in your presence more because they don't feel choked. But if you're so hard to get, you're going to make them want to run away from you. Work at making the relationship between you and your daughter-in-law's parents a friendly one. You may be a marvelous parent, and you may have very good means to be for the very young couple as well. You may have bought them the apartment they live in. You may have bought them all their furniture without even getting help from the other side. Sometimes children come from families that don't have much. They may have left their parents' home with bare necessities, and you bring them into your house and you give them everything. Many parents make a mistake and they say, we gave you everything. What did your parents give you? They gave you nothing. Remember, when you give, you're actually doing it for yourself. By giving, you are getting a lot of pleasure. You experience the fun of giving. You're also helping your children. If the other side is not helping and is not giving, don't mention it. Never say to your daughter-in-law, look what I gave you. What did your mother give you? Couples eventually wind up having a lot of marital problems. They even come to a point of getting a divorce because of these types of arguments. Stay away from dangerous issues because you are only jeopardizing the marital harmony of the young couple. So this is very important, because if you are the type of a family that you have money, God blessed you, and you're very well-to-do, and you're very successful, and you can afford paying more for the couple to get them on their feet, it's unfair for you to constantly have to remind your daughter-in-law, or even your son-in-law for the matter. It's not right to constantly remind them and say, oh, what did your parents do? We bought you your furniture. I bought you the car. I'm paying for your rent. Maybe true. But when you're constantly reminding the children that you're doing everything and what is the other side of the family doing, you're actually causing a lot of tension between the husband and wife, between the couple, between your children. And they may end up having, God forbid, separate ways. They may end up having divorce because of this. It's not a joke. You have to be very careful what you put into your children's brain with what you're saying. For wonderful family relationships, everyone should be busy praising everyone else. Praise your daughter-in-law, because when you praise your daughter-in-law, your son is going to appreciate her more. And the same applies to your son-in-law. Praise your son-in-law. When your daughter sees your positive opinion about her husband, She's going to admire him more. A mother should say to her daughter, you have the most fantastic husband. Wow. What a wonderful man you married. A mother-in-law should say to her son, what a wonderful wife you have. What wonderful in-laws you have. With this approach, the relationship flourishes and people become appreciative of one another. They look at each other with a different light when they're praised. On the other hand, if a son constantly hears his mother bashing his wife, instead of seeing his wife's good points, he's going to see his wife in a negative light. His mother's comments can ruin his marriage. How dare she? It's none of her business. She should be happy with the girl her son chose to marry. So remember, never say anything bad about your daughter-in-law to your son. Never. After all, you want your son to have a happy life. So why destroy his marriage? So those are excellent points. The points mentioned here provide a basic outline, a starting point. You need to add from your own life experiences as a daughter-in-law. Think of how hard it must be for your mother-in-law to spend the entire life bringing up her son and then feel like she's losing him. On the other hand, if she feels like she's gaining a daughter instead, she's going to be less jealous and less demanding. And as a mother-in-law, love your daughter-in-law, for you gained yourself a daughter without any hard work. It all depends on having a positive approach. So that was a wonderful chapter. Again, from this book, Woman to Woman. Highly recommend this book if you're married, if you know someone who is getting married. And I really appreciate the person that asked me to cover this topic again. We did this many years ago. So if you want this topic in Russian, you can even go under my page and just type in your mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, and the video that I did 4 years ago, which I translated to 2 parts. The Russian version of the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law's relationships is going to be on that page. If you find this video to be helpful, as always, feel free to share it with others. And as always, I am very thankful and grateful to all of you who always leave a positive feedback. Even a negative one is welcome, as long as it's constructive. And if you're not following my Instagram page, I've had many new people join me. Please feel free and go join me on my Instagram as well. It's YOCHGRAM, which is Yochgram. Go ahead and follow me there. I would love to have you join me on my Instagram profile as well. Thank you once again for watching and have a wonderful night.